Oh, hello! Mark Pearson, Executive and Artistic Director of the College Light Opera Company. Welcome to CLOC-Tails, a weekly concert series featuring CLOC alumni. CLOC-Tails is made possible by a generous gift from the Kurt Weill Foundation of Music. This week, I got to catch up with everyone's favorite patterman, James Mills. But before we hear from James, this wouldn't be CLOC-Tails without a cocktail. This week we're featuring the Tipperary, a take on the Manhattan, and here's how it's made. The Tipperary. You will need a chilled glass, Irish whiskey, vermouth, green chartreuse, Angostura bitters, ice, and a cherry for garnish. Add 1.5 ounces of Irish whiskey to your shaker. Add 1 ounce of vermouth, a half an ounce of green chartreuse, 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, add your ice, shake well, strain into a chilled glass, and garnish with an orange peel or a cherry. And there you have your Tipperary. So, James Mills, it is so wonderful, exciting, and delightful to be able to talk with you. First of all, cheers.
Oh, yes.
To CLOC-Tails. Ching.
Oh.
So, James, for those who don't know, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Alrighty, well, I'm James Mills, and I am a comic patterman. I was a CLOC in the vocal company. I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but came back as a stage director for the last few years, and my specialty is Gilbert and Sullivan and, crazy characters. I'm a character actor. So that's sort of me in a nutshell.
Can you tell us all what a patterman is? What does that actually mean?
Yes. The patterman is sort of the stereotypical funny guy in Gilbert and Sullivan shows that gets everybody into trouble and then out of trouble right before the curtain comes down. And they sing very, very fast and sing lots and lots of words, which is where the patter comes from. Gilbert and Sullivan is famous for patter in almost every role, every vocal part, all the choruses sing in patter. But the patterman specifically is modeled after sort of the character actor of the time, not necessarily the greatest singer, not necessarily the greatest dancer, but has everything and really is the focus is on the words and the getting from point A to point B.
Great. And remind us again, what year were you here at CLOC?
Yes, I was in the vocal company for one summer, and that was 2004. I actually have my CLOC headshot here.
Ooh.
Still have those cheekbones? I don't know. But yes, I was there for one summer, and it was glorious. I had the most wonderful time, and it changed my life. I came back from CLOC realizing that I could do it. I went there thinking, I don't know, I'm a college kid. I want to go into theater, but I don't know. I'm moving all the way. I'm from New Mexico. I'm from Albuquerque. So the idea of moving to New York or the East Coast at all was terrifying. So 3 months on the Cape in a musical theater boot camp basically made a man out of me, so to speak. And I was ready to go. And I love it. I came back in 2010 for one of the Stable to Stage benefits that you helmed, Mr. Pearson, and then was asked back to be a stage director. One time when I couldn't come because I was away in England doing a Gilbert and Sullivan festival, so too bad. But I came back in 2016, and I've been on staff as a stage director for the last several summers.
Great. Can you remind us about some of maybe notable roles you played while you were at CLOC in the vocal company?
Well, for anyone who's ever been in the vocal company at CLOC, I had one of those big strike outs on the first auditions. 3 shows in a row, you audition on the same day, and I bombed. I think part of it was coming from a high altitude desert climate to the damp and damper cape, and it just all settled in my chest, and I had no range. It was awful. It was one of those audition nightmares. So yeah, first 3 shows, I think I was Enoch Snow Jr. in Carousel, that notable role. I got beaten up. It was great. But a few, the second round of auditions, I kind of caught my stride, and I started to realize what my niche was, and that was the character actor. I looked like the young tenor, but I was the funny man. And I needed that. I needed that sort of smack in the face after the first 3 auditions. And I started getting old man roles. Let's see, one of my first and favorites was the Mr. Lundy in Brigadoon.
I love that you have these pictures ready.
Oh, please, Mark. I am not an amateur when it comes to this sort of thing. That role was so funny because I was like, oh, great, a character actor. I get to come in for the last 20 minutes of an act that's already 20 minutes too long and talk the entire time. It was terrifying. It was monologue after monologue after monologue. And every time, as an actor, you usually rely on some dialogue to help you know where you're going. But every other character in that scene is like, and what did you do, Mr. Lundy? Like, that doesn't help me. Tell us more about the witches. Like, okay, not much help there.
That's great. And you also had, I think, a big awakening that summer with a particular role. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I loved the Gilbert and Sullivan. I knew I wanted to do it. I didn't see myself as a leading player in it because I just didn't know it very well. I came to CLOC having done HMS Pinafore in the course and loved it. So naturally, CLOC seemed like a really exciting place to learn more about it. But the first show was Iolanthe, and I didn't even audition for the Lord Chancellor. It just wasn't even on my radar. I think I read the sides for Talaler because I thought I was a tenor.
Silly.
Yes, that deserves a sip, I believe.
Cheers.
Cheers, yes. But the Yeoman of the Guard came along, and everybody was pushing me to audition for Jack Point, the strolling jester. They knew that I was the actor type in the group. I wasn't the strongest singer, I wasn't the strongest dancer, but I was the actor, and that was actually what I was studying to get my degree in at school, was acting. And I just gave it a shot, and John Lucas, the great John Lucas, took a chance on me and cast me in that role. And I didn't even realize how huge it is and how coveted it is in the Gilbert and Sullivan community. It is sort of the most difficult, arguably challenging role to play as a comic patterman, because it's not just the patter songs. There's so much else to the role that is challenging, and especially in a week to get to those layers. And it's a very tragic show too. So you have these major arcs from beginning to end. But I had a wonderful, wonderful time. And I had a Mark Pearson exclusive designed jester costume.
Yes.
Yeah.
I recognize that outfit. I think
Yes.
Anna Light may have actually made that outfit. Is that correct?
She may have. And I know that we were all very close that summer. And if I may, I think I have a picture
you
of
may not.
all 3 of us.
Oh no!
I think you and Anna Light decided to
I
try
had hair.
The bottle bleaching.
Yeah. Oh, the follies of youth.
Oh yeah, but it was such a good time, and that was a very transformative role. I played other old men that summer. I was the old prisoner in La Pericole, and I was the mysterious man in Into the Woods at the end of the summer. So I kind of got stuck in that groove, but that wasn't a bad thing. It was great opportunity to learn from so many people, and to return to John Lucas, who took that chance on me. My first big lead that summer. He told me, he and Dr. Todd Dr. Todd Florin were talking after the Sitzprobe, and they said to me on the patio out in front of the Highfield, they said, you know, you could really make a career in professional Gilbert and Sullivan, in a Gilbert and Sullivan company. And I just thanked them and laughed to myself like, those don't exist. What are you talking about? And it's, as you know, as I'm sure we will talk about, I kind of followed that trajectory.
Well, I was actually going to ask, do you feel like that was a defining moment for you, or more specifically, I think it was a defining moment for you, but did you know at the time it was a defining moment, or how long did it take you to figure out that that's really where this career started?
I think what you just said, at the time, it just was a humorous compliment. And I took it and I was honored by it, but it was very humorous to me because I honestly, before I came to CLOC, I didn't know anything or had even heard the titles Iolanthe or the Yeoman of the Guard. Much like many of our young vocal company singers that come, that Gilbert and Sullivan's not super on the radar. And it wasn't for me. I knew it from community theater, not from school. So when I heard that, it just always was in the back of my mind. You know, we as actors hear things from directors, you get touched by everybody, not touched, but you know, touched by everybody that you work with, and all those little nuggets just sort of get filed away in the bank. And years later in New York, I started getting work with Liederkranz Opera Theater with Liz Hastings, who is my pianist for
Who's
this.
on piano, we should mention.
Yes, Liz Hastings cast me just because she called me up and said, I heard you moved to New York and I just need a charming old man for my show. I was 22. But I said, yes, I am starving for something to do creatively in my first 6 months in the city. And I started doing stuff like that. And the artistic director of the New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players came to see that show. And so a year later, when I actually auditioned for that company, he remembered me and he knew I was a CLOC guy. And it was just like fate came together and I was hired. And now this is what I do.
Oh, a private buffoon is a light-hearted loon if you listen to popular rumor. From the morn to the night he's so joyous and bright, and he bubbles with wit and good humor. He's so quaint and so terse both in prose and in verse, yet though people forgive his transgression, there are one or two rules that all family fools must observe if they love their profession. There are one or two rules, half a dozen maybe, that all family fools of whatever degree must observe if they love their profession. If you wish to succeed as a jester, you'll need to consider each person's auricular. What is all right for B would quite scandalize C, for C is so very particular. And D may be dull, and E's very thick skull is as empty of brains as a ladle, while F is F sharp, and will cry with a carp that he's known your best joke from his cradle. When your humor they flout, you can't let yourself go, and it does put you out when a person says, oh, I've known that old joke from me cradle. If your master is surly from getting up early and tempers are short in the morning, and an opportune joke is enough to provoke him to give you at once a month's warning, then if you refrain, he's at you again, for he likes to get value for money. He'll ask then and there, with an insolent stare, if you know that you're paid to be funny. It adds to the tasks of a merry man's place when your principal asks with a scowl on his face, if you know that you're paid to be funny. Comes a bishop maybe, or a solemn DD, or beware of his anger provoking. Better not pull his hair, don't stick pins in his chair, he don't understand practical joking. If the jest that you crack have an orthodox smack, you may get a bland smile from these sages, but should they by chance be imported from France, half a crown is stopped out of your wages. It's a general rule, though your zeal it may quench, if the family fool tells a joke that's too French. Half a crown is stopped out of his wages. Though your head it may rack with the bilious attack, and your senses with toothache you're losing. Don't be mopey and flat, they don't fine you for that if you're properly quaint and amusing. Though your wife ran away with a soldier that day and took with her your trifle of money, bless your heart, they don't mind. They're exceedingly kind. They don't blame you as long as you're funny. It's a comfort to feel if your partner should flit. Though you suffer a deal, they don't mind it a bit. They don't blame you so long as you're funny.
So you were hired in the company, and what was that process like? Were you hired immediately as the Major General?
Oh, no. So CLOC was my summer of 2004. So this is roughly like early autumn 2006. So not a tremendous time has gone by. And I just looked in the newspaper, in the backstage, the papers, you know, they used to sell those things, newspapers. And I looked and I saw an audition for New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players. They were specifically casting for the Yeoman of the Guard. And it was just one of those moments where that little conversation with John Lucas and Dr. Todd just kind of went, bing, remember that? Professional theater company in New York, equity contract, city center, the Yeoman of the Guard. And I was like, I know that show. I know every word. And because it's funny about CLOC, you learn something in a week. And if you really learn it enough to feel like you know it, to actually go on stage and not hide in your dressing room, you remember parts of it forever. It's unbelievable the way that works. So I went in and auditioned, and they were not looking for me. I think they were looking for chorus basses. And that wasn't me. And I think they were looking for, they were definitely looking for an actor to play Fairfax. And that really wasn't me. But I went anyway, because that's what you do in New York. You just go. And I wasn't in the union, so I got an appointment, luckily. And I sang Jack Point's first song, his first solo, which is I've Jibe and Joke. Not a very memorable song. It's very important in the storytelling of the show. But it's not super impressive. It's a little pattery. It's kind of but to me, that was an audition song, because that is what Jack Point is doing in the play. He's auditioning for the role of the lieutenant's jester. And I thought, these GNS people are going to love that. Well, the first thing they said is, why did you choose to sing that song? And I explained why, and they thought, oh, that was interesting. Can you sing? I have a song to sing. Oh, you can look at the score. I said, I don't need the score. Oh, okay. And I sang my parts of that. And they're like, will you come to the movement callback? And so I did. And it was like movement for opera singers. So it was okay. I looked great. Yeah.
Everything's relative.
I was dancing circles around everyone. It was amazing. And he asked me, the artistic director, Albert Bergeret, he pulled me up and he's like, would you do Jack Point's patter song? The famous A Private Buffoon is a Lighthearted Loon. And I said, sure. He's like, here, take the score and just go have 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm okay. I got it. And so he just stopped the audition. There was a horde of mezzos and sopranos on one side of the room and a horde of basses and tenors on the other side of the room. It's this big church hall. And he just made me do it on the spot in front of everybody. It was terrifying. But I did it, and he pulled me to the table. He's like, we think you're great, but there's, we have patter men, you're very young, and I'll be in touch. And I didn't hear anything. And it was well into what should have been the rehearsal period for this show when I got a phone call, and just one of the chorus 10 or 2 parts had dropped out, and he asked if I wanted the contract. So I got lucky, and I got my contract, and it was an equity contract, and I made my debut in the chorus of Yeoman of the Guard at City Center in the 2006-2007 season. And it's been incremental. I started understudying the roles. Major General was the first one. I became one of the youngest in the company to play the role. I was 23 or 24, still playing the Major General, and have gone on to play Sir Joseph Porter, John Wellington Wells, Reginald Bunthorne. Oh, what else? And the Lord Chancellor, and then just last season, full circle, I got to play Jack Point for the first time since CLOC.
That's excellent. How did that feel to revisit that role after so many years?
I was incredibly humbled because it is a very hard role, as I've already said. And in my heart and in my mind, I knew I got this, but I hadn't. That was the 21-year-old me that knew Jack Point, not the me now, whatever age I might be. And so
24.
yes, the 24-year-old me, so many years. It was a huge challenge to just get back into that groove and to retain what I learned about it before, but also learn from the company that I work for. And New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players is the premier, just like CLOC, it is the forefront of this material in America. And there's a long history. They're almost founded almost as long ago as CLOC was. I think we're in the 45th or 46th season. And a lot of very notable pattern men have come through the company, including John Reed. John Reed, who is famous for all the Gilbert and Sullivan recordings in the 60s. He's a doily cart legend. He performed for the company in the 80s, long before I did. But certain elements of these roles are still there. The hats, the props. I have right here, this is the hat that Sir Joseph wears in HMS Pinafore. This hat here, it's fabulous. I love it. And I wear this hat when I do HMS Pinafore. But John Reed wore this hat when he did HMS Pinafore with our company. And John Aston of the Addams Family, he wore this hat when he played Sir Joseph. So there's this, just like CLOC, sometimes you're wearing the dress that somebody else wore 20 years ago, or that maybe Mark Pearson, who is now the artistic director, made when he was just on costume staff. It's an incredible lineage that gets passed down. So learning Jack Point again, I had very big footsteps to fill.
When I was a lad, I served a term as office boy to an attorney's firm. I cleaned the windows and I swept the floor, and I polished up the handle of the big front door. I polished up that handle so carefully that now I am the ruler of the Queen's Navy. As office boy, I made such a mark that they gave me the post of the junior clerk. I served the writs with a smile so bland, and I copied all the letters in a big round hand. I copied all the letters in a hand so free that now I am the ruler of the Queen's Navy. In serving writs, I made such a name that an articled clerk I soon became. I wore clean collars and a brand new suit for the pass examination at the Institute. That pass examination did so well for me that now I am the ruler of the Queen's Navy. Of legal knowledge I acquired such a grip that they took me into the partnership, and that junior partnership, I ween, was the only ship I ever had seen. But that kind of ship so suited me that now I am the ruler of the Queen's Navy. I grew so rich that I was sent by a pocket bureau into Parliament. I always voted at my party's call, and I never thought of thinking for myself at all. I thought so little, they rewarded me by making me the ruler of the Queen's Navy. Now, landsmen or whoever you may be, if you want to rise to the top of the tree, if your soul isn't fettered to an office stool, be careful to be guided by this golden rule. Stick close to your desks and never go to sea, and you all may be rulers of the Queen's Navy.
That's great. Do you have other specific memories or favorite memories of your time at CLOC, or anything that sticks out to you?
Too many. I'm lucky that not only have I been there in the vocal company, but as a singer at a gala, and then now as a stage director. So I make these incredible memories every year. But I think one that sticks out the most, as you might recall, was a moment in Lady Be Good when one of the Highfield Bats, one of the Bat family, made their unexpected appearance on stage. And I was playing the role of Bertie Bassett, who's sort of an alky and sees things. And that's one of the plot lines, is the two scheming characters are trying to convince this character that I was playing that he didn't see what he saw. He didn't see this other character who's supposed to be dead. You know, long story short, I'm in the scene with the character who's supposed to be dead, and Bat is doing loops around the theater, doing just loops. And I'm in the mood. I'm focused. I'm in the scene. But the tenor on stage with me is like, just watching this bat flying around. And I'm like, oh God, I'm being upstaged by a bat. And so many scenes later, when these two scheming characters are trying to convince me I didn't see this man who's supposed to be dead, I said, well, I thought I saw him, and I broke all the CLOC rules, and I thought I was going to get fired. And I looked deadpan to the audience and said, and I thought I saw a bat too, and just held that out. And it sounds stupid now, but it floored the house. Every person in that theater was crying. I mean, David Weiler in the pit was like crying with laughter. I looked off stage and the stage manager was clapping. It was wrong. It was very wrong. Don't do that, children. It's not okay. But B Haslin and Ursula Haslin, they called me up to their room after the show where the artistic staff were having their post-show discussions. And I thought, I'm getting fired. And he said, and he's like stroking his mustache. He's like, we don't really condone ad-libbing. We don't like that. But that was great. That was funny. And I was saved. I was saved by the bat. So that memory was just such a special time.
My name is John Wellington Wells. I'm a dealer in magic and spells, in blessings and curses and ever-filled purses and prophecies, witches and knells. If you want a proud foe to make tracks, if you'd melt a rich uncle in wax, you've got to look in on the resident gin number 70 Simeriacs. We've a first-rate assortment of magic, and for raising a posthumous shade, with effects that are comic or tragic, there's no cheaper house in the trade. Love philter with quantities of it, and for knowledge if anyone burns, we're keeping a very small profit, a prophet who brings us unbounded returns. For he can prophesy with the wink of his eye, peep with security into futurity, sum up your history, clear up a mystery, human proclivity for a nativity. He has answers oracular, bogey spectacular, tetrapods tragical, mirrors so magical, fast astronomical, solemn or comical, and if you want it, he makes a reduction on taking a quantity. Oh, if anyone anything lacks, he'll find it already in stacks, if he'd only look in on the resident gin number 70 Simeriacs. He can raise you hosts of ghosts, and that without reflectors, and creepy things with wings, and gods and grisly specters. He can fill you crowds of shrouds, and horrify you vastly. He can rack your brains with chains, and gibberings grim and ghastly. And if you planet, he changes organity with an urbanity full of satanity, vexes humanity with an inanity fatal to vanity, driving your foes to the verge of insanity. Barring tautology, in demonology, electrobiology, mystic gnostology, spirit philology, high-class astrology, such as his knowledge isn't a man to require an apology. Oh, my name is John Wellington Wells. I'm a dealer in magic and spells, in blessings and curses and ever-filled purses and prophecies, witches and knells. And if anyone anything lacks, he'll find it already in stacks, if he'd only look in on the resident gin number 70 Simeriacs.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the shows you've directed here, or maybe if you have a favorite one that you've worked on?
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of, what's the word? I can't think of the word. It's perfect, full circle moment. Serendipitous. Ah, there it is. It was serendipitous that the first show I was asked to direct at CLOC was the show that John Lucas was supposed to direct, and that was Yeoman of the Guard. And he directed me. It's my favorite Gilbert and Sullivan show. I hadn't yet performed it with NYGASP, New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players, otherwise known as NYGASP. I had not played it with them yet, but I had done it 3 times in the ensemble, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. And actually right there, that's the poster from the season. I got it signed by all the cast and crew. It was such an incredible experience. That show, it means so much to me. I was stepping in for John, who had recently passed away. It was your first summer, Mark, as artistic director, and you've been one of my dearest, longest friends since CLOC. And my music director was the great Jonathan Brennan, maestro, mini maestro, as we call him. And it was incredible. Everything just came together. It was the middle of the season, and it was the hottest part of the year, and everybody was exhausted. But it I think will always be my favorite, probably just because it was my first. I've had such tremendous ones since the next summer. We did Patience and the CLOC premiere of Hunchback of Notre Dame back to back. And it couldn't be more different. It was insane. I don't even know how we survived that. I don't even know how I survived being in the vocal company. It's crazy. Every time has been great. And the last 2 summers I've gotten to be the director of show 1, or shared with you when we did the double bill for the 50th season. And that is wonderful, because you really get to see everybody the day they arrive and get them excited about it. And I like to hope that I can get everybody as excited about Gilbert and Sullivan as I am and as I was. And sometimes it works.
So I think it's important to ask, you are in what could be called a very niche profession or niche place as a performer. How does one find that work? Is there work? If there is, where does one find it? And how do you go about getting it?
Well, I really think you hit on the right description for it. It is a niche world. And that has been my success since I went into acting in high school. I went into acting as a way to just escape from the world. I was having a lot of family drama and sadness in my life, and that was a way to escape. And being these older characters was something I learned right away that I could do. Everybody else was trying, but somehow my ability to observe the world around me and just spending a lot of time with older, zanier people, and I guess I got lucky in that respect. I had adapted these impressions and physicalities and dialects to sort of mimic them. And that was fun for me, and it was a way I could break into something and leave my stage fright and shut the outer world out for a couple of hours in this dark, safe play space. And so moving forward through college and college like opera and into the city, it's like going against the tide coming in. And every wave that's hitting you is, am I a principal tenor? No. Am I going to get this tour that I think I'm perfect for? No. I haven't had a single callback. Today's the day. No. That's what going in this profession is like. It is constantly pushing against the tide coming in. And the quicker you can find what it is that is special about you, what makes you different from that chorus line of others, the sooner you'll have success. That's your sandbar. That's what's going to lift you out of that tide. And I found it in Gilbert and Sullivan. It was a skill I had. I could sing quickly. I had this tremendous breath support. I think because I was a runner in school, I just had this steady stream of breath support that really helped. And by singing, it's improved, but I was never encouraged to sing as a kid. So That came to me in college, and every day I work at it. I work at my craft. So finding that niche and understanding that you might want to do something else, but maybe it's not what the rest of the world sees for you. You've got to find something. That's the only way you can survive in this business, is find something that is unique and special about you.
Phyllis, who is a ward of court, has so powerfully affected your lordships that you have appealed to me in a body to give her to whichever one of you she may think proper to select. And, noble lord has just gone to her cottage to request her immediate attendance. It would be idle to deny that I myself have the misfortune to be singularly attracted by this young person. My regard for her is rapidly undermining my constitution. 3 months ago, I was a stout man. I need say no more. If I could reconcile it with my duty, I should unhesitatingly award her to myself. For I can conscientiously say that I know no man who is so well fitted to render her exceptionally happy. But such an award would be open to misconstruction, and therefore, at whatever personal inconvenience, I waive my claim. The feelings of a Lord Chancellor who is in love with a ward of court are not to be envied. What is his position? Can he give his own consent to his own marriage with his own ward? Can he marry his own ward without his own consent? And if he marries his own ward without his own consent, can he commit himself for contempt of his own court? And if he commit himself for contempt of his own court, can he appear by counsel before himself to move for arrest of his own judgment? My lords, it is indeed painful to have to sit upon a wool sack which is stuffed with such thorns as these. Love, unrequited, robs me of my rest. Love, hopeless love, my ardent soul encumbers. Love, nightmare-like, lies heavy on my chest and weaves itself into my midnight slumbers. When you're lying awake with a dismal headache and repose is tabooed by anxiety, I conceive you may use any language you choose to indulge in without impropriety. For your brain is on fire, the bedclothes conspire of usual slumber to plunder you. First your counterpane goes and uncovers your toes, and your sheet slips demurely from under you. Then the blanketing tickles, you feel like mixed pickles, so terribly sharp is the pricking. And you're hot and you're cross and you tumble and toss till there's nothing twixt you and the ticking. Then the bedclothes all creep to the ground in a heap, and you pick 'em all up in a tangle. Next your pillow resigns and politely declines to remain at its usual angle. Well, you get some repose in the form of a doze with hot eyeballs and head ever raking, but your slumbering teems with such horrible dreams that you'd very much better be waking. For you dream you are crossing the channel and tossing about in a steamer from Harwich, which is something between a large bathing machine and a very small second-class carriage. And you're giving a treat, penny ice and cold meat, to a party of friends and relations. They're a ravenous horde, and they all came on board at Sloane Square and South Kensington stations. And bound on that journey you find your attorney who started that morning from Devon. He's a bit undersized and you don't feel surprised when he tells you he's only 11. Well, you're driving like mad with this singular lad. By the by, the ship's now a four-wheeler. And you're playing round games and he calls you bad names when you tell him that ties pay the dealer. But this you can't stand, so you throw up your hand and you find you're as cold as an icicle. In your shirt and your socks, the black silk with gold clocks, crossing Salisbury Plain on a bicycle. And he and the crew are on bicycles too, which they've somehow or other invested in. And he's telling the tars all the particulars of a company he's interested in. It's a scheme of devices to get at low prices all goods from cough mixtures to cables, which tickled the sailors by treating retailers as though they were all vegetables. You get a good spadesman to plant a small tradesman, first take off his boots with a boot tree, and his legs will take root and his fingers will shoot, and they'll blossom and bud like a fruit tree. From the greengrocer tree you get grapes and green pea, cauliflower, pineapple and cranberries, while the pastry cook plant cherry brandy will grant apple puffs and three corners and bamberries. The shares at a penny and ever so many are taken by Rothschild and Bering, and just as a few are allotted to you, you awake with a shudder despairing. You're a regular wreck with a crick in your neck, and no wonder you snore for your head's on the floor, and needles and pins on your soles to your shins, and your flesh is a creep for your left leg's asleep, and you've crap on your toes and a fly on your nose and some fluff in your lung and a feverish tongue and a thirst that's intense in a general sense that you haven't been sleeping in clover. But the darkness is past, and it's daylight at last, and the night has been long. Ditto, ditto, my song. And thank goodness they're both of them over.
I want to ask you a little bit about your process, especially since you are working mostly on roles that are, at least to a certain group of people, very iconic, very much steeped in a lot of tradition. So what is that process like when you are working on, say, the Major General or the Lord Chancellor, and you're trying to bring something maybe new to it, or maybe not? But I think a lot of us would be interested to know what that process is like and how that's different from maybe someone who's approaching other theater or music theater.
I'd say there's probably two different schools of approaching it. And speaking of school, as I said earlier, I studied acting as my major. I went to the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, my hometown, and got my BA in theater, in acting. So I did all the techniques and this and that and the other, and yeah, it's all great. And you store all that. You put it all in your bag of tricks, and you fill that bag of tricks in school, and then you really just have to make what works for you work for you. It's not going to work for everybody. And for me, approaching a new character or something that isn't quite so steeped in tradition, it's a combination of inside out, outside in, costume elements, and the set, the makeup. There's a lot of those exterior elements that certain actors don't focus on, but they really help me because I am not a 70-year-old man. And I've never walked in the footsteps of a 70-year-old man, but I have played several of them. And so you have to find those elements. I had a brilliant acting teacher who just gave me a stupid little trick. He's like, do you know how to walk like someone who's got sore feet? I said, no, not really. And he said, just try this. Go put some pebbles in your shoes. Just go out to the dirt, and this is New Mexico, there's dirt and rocks everywhere. Just put a few of them in your shoes and just spend today during class just walking around and tell me what it feels like at the end. And at the end of class, my feet were killing me because it was just these little stones. And that was a very, I guess, method actor way of like figuring it out. But that's part of the creation process. And I think considering everything you do in the room and building the character in rehearsal, you can't neglect what you're going to look like on stage with the hair, the makeup, the costume. Costumes restrict your movement. Period pieces, you have different, especially for women, corsets and things that you don't necessarily know what that feels like in everyday life in the 21st century. So you got to start implementing that. Wear your rehearsal skirts or your corsets to rehearsal. Wear your character shoes. If you use a monocle, use your monocle in rehearsal, because if all of a sudden you get that at performance and you're like, and it won't stay in, what are you going to do? You have to learn. You need it the whole time. So I built up my little like kit of things that I use as a GNS guy. The other thing you need to remember is that if you're coming into something that is steeped in tradition, you can't just burn the barn down and start over, or else it's not going to fit with the rest of the production, nor what the audience wants. You have to remember that too. And that's incredibly challenging. Like you said, Major General. Any Gilbert and Sullivan fan in the world has played or played in their shower that role. And that's a tremendous amount of responsibility. So you can't just do something so radically different in a traditional production. And it's hard. You have to make a lot of concessions as an artist to say, well, I know I need to do this, but how can I make it my own so that I don't feel like I'm having this traditional doily cart like movement forced on me? How do I make it my own? And that's fun. I've grown to love it. I take it as a personal challenge to take something that, like I said, John Reed or John Aston or any of the other great patternmen in my company's history. How do I take every bit of sweat they put into this hat and add mine to it, but not change it? It's a challenge. I really kind of love it.
Well, that actually leads to my next question too. Can you tell us one thing that you absolutely love about your profession and one thing that you, if not hate, you wish would change about your profession?
I love the audience and the applause and the adrenaline that comes with doing a live show. I love it. It's incredibly addictive. It gives you this tremendous high, especially for someone like myself who was terribly shy as a kid and cripplingly shy. I couldn't give a report in front of my class in middle school without feeling like I was going to vomit. It's just that stage fright. And I've learned to change that. So that is one of the most incredible things about this industry. And that's what made me realize that I had caught the bug, and I knew it was for me. As hard as it is that those moments of just joy, the laughter, the tears, the applause, the shouts of, as I said, joy and rapture, that's it. It's a hard industry, and that's the part that I don't like about it. It's incredibly hard to make a living. Look at the world right now. Nearly every single one of us live theater performers is unemployed, and that's terrifying. It's unfathomable because we're all employed a lot, but to consider that the entire industry is shut down is just really scary. And living paycheck to paycheck, and New York's an expensive place. And I'm watching friends of mine who I've known for a decade here in the city, they're moving because they don't have a way to support themselves. And I have to say that one of the hardest things about the industry has become exponentially harder because of the situation we're in right now.
Well, that leads me to my next question. What have you been doing with yourself since quarantine and Corona has been with us?
Yeah. Well, I was very fortunate enough to actually be on tour when everything started happening. We had a Pirates of Penzance and Mikado tour out for most of February and March, and we were in California, in Sacramento, in Folsom, where the same day that Governor Newsom in California issued the statewide closures. And here we were, this full company of actors and musicians and on the road in the complete wrong coast. What was going to happen? And the matinee and evening show the next day canceled. We drove to the next city where our next evening show was supposed to be, canceled. And so we all flew home, and we got home 2 days before New York State and New York City went into lockdown. So that was scary. But all of us had this sort of feeling like we were unfulfilled. We had a production of Gondoliers that was supposed to open in April. I was supposed to be doing a concert. This year I was fortunate to be the recipient of the Isaac Asimov Award for Artistic Excellence with NIGASP, which is a tremendous honor. Isaac Asimov was a huge Gilbert and Sullivan fan, and so this is an award that honors his legacy and memory. And I was supposed to be producing a concert, and it got canceled. And I was supposed to do the first show at CLOC this summer, and that didn't happen. So a couple of my colleagues and I started focusing our attention towards this crazy, scary digital world that we are currently cheersing each other through.
Cheers.
Yes. Oh. And it's a scary world for a live theater performer. So for NIGAS, for my company, I've started producing and directing a series of digital products. We did a Modern Major General parody that was about social distancing, and it has over 30,000 views on YouTube, which is super cool because I've never done anything like that before. And we did a beautiful version of the Madrigal from Ruddigore in Merry May to celebrate Sir Arthur Sullivan's birthday. And actually, just this last week, I completed a 50-minute digital concert featuring 7 of our principal singers with New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players for a theater in California that we were supposed to be at today. Our concert was supposed to be right now. And here I am in Hell's Kitchen, not in California. So that was a tremendously exciting thing to do. It was very hard, and I'm still figuring it out. I have to check my microphone set up on Zoom and everything every time I do it because it's just like not second nature for me. But we're making art, and we're finding a way to do it. And I am so excited about what CLOC has been doing this summer. This is so great, bringing alumni and students and workshops all together with something that we've never done before. It's a new world, and I think as long as we can get the support that we need as artists to continue to do this, we'll be ready when the world opens up again. We'll be ready to get out there.
I hope you're right. I really hope you're right.
Am I alone and unobserved? I am. Then let me own I'm an aesthetic sham. This hair severe is but a mere veneer. This cynic smile is but a while of guile. This costume chaste is but good taste misplaced. Let me confess, a languid love for lilies does not blight me. Lank limbs and haggard cheeks do not delight me. I do not care for dirty greens by any means. I do not long for all one sees that's Japanese. I am not fond of uttering platitudes in stained glass attitudes. In short, my medievalism's affectation, born of a morbid love of admiration. If you're anxious for to shine in the high aesthetic line as a man of culture rare, you must get up all the germs of the transcendental terms and plant them everywhere. You must lie upon the daisies and discourse in novel phrases of your complicated state of mind. The meaning doesn't matter if it's only idle chatter of a transcendental kind. And everyone will say, as you walk your mystic way, if this young man expresses himself in terms too deep for me, why, what a very singularly deep young man this deep young man must be. Be eloquent in praise of the very dull old days which have long since passed away, and convince him, if you can, that the reign of good Queen Anne was culture's palmiest day. Of course you will pooh-pooh whatever's fresh and new and declare it's crude and mean. For art stopped short in the cultivated court of the Empress Josephine. And everyone will say, as you walk your mystic way, if that's not good enough for him, which is good enough for me, why, what a very cultivated kind of youth this kind of youth must be. Then a sentimental passion of a vegetable fashion must excite your languid spleen. An attachment on a Plato for a bashful young potato or a not too French bean. Though the Philistines may jostle, you will rank as an apostle in the high aesthetic band. If you walk down Piccadilly with a poppy or a lily in your medieval hand. And everyone will say, as you walk your flowery way, if he's content with a vegetable love, which would certainly not suit me, why, what a most particularly pure young man this pure young man must be.
Well, James, this has been such a delight to chat with you and share a drink. I'm going to ask you one last question, which I've been asking everyone, which is if you had one word of advice for the 20 or 21-year-old self, what would that piece of advice be?
Gosh, 21-year-old me. Well, here he is. I think I would say, don't be afraid to take some chances. It's scary. The world is very scary. New York is scary. The theater is scary, but you got it. You know how to entertain. Trust yourself. Get more sleep. Eat well. You know, you can't just live off ramen. Keep your friends close. They're going to support you. You build your network of friends and contacts because you never know who's going to get you the next job. And don't piss anybody off because they will not forget that, especially in this industry. So 21-year-old James, you got it. Just trust yourself.
That's great. Wonderful advice. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Mark. This has been so wonderful.
CLOC-Tails is part of our larger series, Digital Clock. Digital Clock is made possible by a generous gift from Phil and Liz Gross. If you'd like to learn more about our programming or how you can become a supporter, visit us at collegelightoperacompany.com. Tune in again next week for another episode of CLOC-Tails.